A late-night crash on a dark Albuquerque road, a single passenger intoxicated, incoherent, and partially naked, and a driver who sprinted off into the darkness. This isn't a scene from a movie. It's the chaotic final chapter in the career of a man many call the greatest fighter of all time. Jon Jones, a talent so huge it felt like something from another planet, watched his legacy come crashing down. Not from a punch, not from a submission, but from the flashing red and blue lights of police cars and a stunning accusation. So how did it get this bad? How did the undisputed king of the octagon find himself in a mess that would force him into a sudden and deeply controversial retirement? To understand the fall, you have to appreciate the climb. Jon "Bones" Jones wasn't just another fighter, he was a phenomenon. He exploded into the UFC with a style no one had ever seen before, a dizzying mix of spinning elbows, oblique kicks, and a creativity that was almost artistic. At just 23 years old, he completely dismantled Mauricio "Shogun" Rua to become the youngest champion in UFC history, a record that still stands today. It wasn't just that he won, it was how he won. He made legends look like amateurs and champions look completely outclassed. His list of victims reads like a Hall of Fame ballot. He ran through a murderer's row of champions. Lyoto Machida, Rashid Evans, Vitor Belfort, and his bitter rival Daniel Cormier. For years, he was the boogeyman of the light heavyweight division, a puzzle nobody could solve. His reign was defined by a record number of title defenses and an unshakable aura of invincibility. After cleaning out one division, he aimed for the most dangerous prize in combat sports, the heavyweight title. In March 2023, he did the unthinkable and effortlessly submitted Cyril Gane, becoming a two-division champion and, for many, sealing his status as the undisputed GOAT. He had reached the absolute summit of the sport. But even at the highest of peaks, the ground beneath his feet was never stable. For every spectacular moment of genius inside the cage, a headline-grabbing disaster was waiting just outside of it. The story of Jon Jones is the story of a man in a constant, furious battle, not just with his opponents, but with himself. His career felt like it was always starting and stopping, thrown off course again and again by his own choices. It started with a DUI in 2012 after he crashed his Bentley into a pole. Then came the failed drug tests, which he and his camp blamed on tainted supplements, leading to stripped titles and lengthy suspensions. And of course, there was the 2015 hit and run. In what now feels like a chilling preview of the crash that would end his career, Jones blew through a red light, smashed into a car driven by a pregnant woman, and fled the scene on foot. He only came back to grab a handful of cash from his rental car before taking off again. Each incident chipped away at the champion's armor. A disorderly conduct charge at a strip club, a DWI where he was found with a gun and an open bottle of liquor, and an alleged assault on a drug tester. The list just kept getting longer. This wasn't bad luck. It was a clear pattern, a portrait of a man who couldn't seem to outrun his own shadow. The seeds of his downfall were planted long before the final crash, watered by a steady diet of self-sabotage that always threatened to swallow his greatness whole. The night of February 24, 2025 was when all those seeds of trouble finally bloomed. When Albuquerque police responded to a single-car accident, they walked into a bizarre scene. In the passenger seat, a woman was partially unclothed and clearly intoxicated. She told the officers that the driver, the man who had taken off on foot after the wreck, was Jon Jones. The details in the police report painted an ugly picture. The woman claimed she'd been at Jones's house, drinking and consuming mushrooms, and they were heading to her place for a change of clothes after a bathroom incident. Her next memory was waking up at the crash site. When an officer spoke to a man on the phone believed to be Jones, the voice on the line was allegedly slurring his words, making vague threats and hinting he could have people hurt. Jones denied it all. He claimed the woman left his house drunk and only called him after she crashed. But police records showed 13 calls from his phone to hers between the time of the crash and the next morning. This was no longer just a rumor. It was a criminal investigation. For months, the incident was a ticking time bomb under his career. On June 17, 2025, it finally exploded. Jones was formally charged with a misdemeanor for leaving the scene of an accident. A court date was set. The final collision wasn't with another car, it was with his own consequences. The Jon Jones story is just full of what-ifs. What if he had just stayed out of trouble? What would his legacy look like then? We want to know what you think. Drop a comment below. Is Jon Jones the GOAT no matter what happened outside the cage? And while you're there, hit that subscribe button so you never miss our deep dives into the biggest stories in sports. The news of the charges was a bombshell, but it was nothing compared to what came next. A mega fight was brewing, a heavyweight title unification bout against the terrifying interim champion Tom Aspinall. It was a fight every fan on the planet wanted to see. But just as reports claimed the fight was a done deal, Jones made a phone call. On June 21, 2025, UFC President Dana White stood at a press conference in Azerbaijan and made a jaw-dropping announcement. "Jon Jones called us last night and retired. Jon Jones is officially retired." And just like that, the most anticipated heavyweight fight in years vanished into thin air. Tom Aspinall was immediately promoted to undisputed champion. The timing was, to put it mildly, suspicious. Jones posted a statement on social media, thanking his family, the UFC, and his fans, and talking about reflection and new challenges. But only a few hours later, the story broke about the February crash and the criminal charges. The fallout was instant and brutal. His old nemesis, Daniel Cormier, flat-out accused him of quitting to avoid fighting Aspinall. Fans and critics called it a coward's way out, a slick move to escape a dangerous opponent under the cover of another legal storm. An online petition to have him stripped of the title had already gotten over 200,000 signatures from fans fed up with his inactivity. While some fighters showed respect for what he did in the cage, the story was already written in the public's mind. Jon Jones, the unbeatable champion, didn't retire in a blaze of glory. He retired under a dark cloud of scandal and suspicion. The retirement was as messy and complicated as the man himself. Dana White claimed he didn't know about the new charges when Jones called, but he still praised him as a warrior who never ducked a fight. The court of public opinion, however, wasn't buying it. For so many, his refusal to fight Aspinall and his retirement right as another scandal hit put a permanent asterisk next to his name. He was the king who abandoned his throne the moment a true challenger appeared at the castle gates. In the aftermath, Tom Aspinall, the new champ, promised to bring activity back to the division, a clear shot at the champion he never got a chance to dethrone. Jones's lawyer released a statement, fiercely denying the charges and claiming Jones wasn't even in the car that night. Jones himself posted cryptic messages online, telling his fans not to believe everything they read. But the damage was done. The end didn't happen in the center of the octagon with his hand raised one last time. It came through a phone call and a press release, a confusing, anticlimactic finish to a legendary career. He leaves the sport with records that may never be broken and a highlight reel for the ages, but he also leaves a legacy that will forever be tangled up in controversy. This story isn't over. We're following every twist and turn. To make sure you get the latest updates as they happen, click that notification bell. And if you found this story compelling, hit the like button. It really helps us bring more stories like this to light. So, who is Jon Jones? Is he the greatest fighter who ever lived, a talent so rare that his flaws just made him human? Or is he the greatest cheat, a cautionary tale of squandered genius and a man who could never conquer his own demons? His story is a mess of contradictions. He was a master of control inside the cage, but seemed to have absolutely none outside of it. He built a legendary career with his fists, only to tear it all down with his choices. As he faces yet another legal battle and the MMA world moves on without him, the debate over his legacy will rage on forever. Will he be remembered for the poetry of his violence inside the octagon, or for the chaos he created outside of it? One thing is for sure, the crash on that February night didn't just end a career. It cemented a legacy as one of the most brilliant and tragic in the history of sports.